Welcome to the Mental Militia, uniting minds and freeing souls from the bonds of mental slavery and ruling class manipulation.
Feelings can assist in an intuitive capacity if and only if the potential viewer/receiver has actually, truly, and accurately developed intuitive capacities. Now, let me say that again, because this is a part that I'm actually going to talk about in the presentation, but it bears really looking at here. I've said this an innumerable amount of times over the years. Most people don't truly have intuitive capacities. Or, as I very harshly put it, your intuition's in the shitter, son or girl. You know, you don't have developed intuitive capacities. And I'm going to really talk about this later on in the presentation, that, you know, there was this concept that was very popular and still probably is to a certain extent, but certainly much more popular in the past, known as women's intuition, it was called. And it's still referred to that in many cases, and some people still believe in it, that the females of our species have a somewhat more elevated intuitive capacity, meaning they can see through a situation and thin slice, based on limited data sets, the truth that is really going on behind something. And I have to bring you the very uncomfortable and unfortunate information that that is really no longer true. And not only is it not any longer really true, it's distorted in the opposite direction. That most people in general, not just women, but to a great extent, females within our society have very much lost this intuitive capacity. Their intuition and intuitive abilities have been diminished by social engineering to a great extent. And it's not just women, it's men too. It's all people in general. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote an awesome book about this that I may even recommend later in the presentation. It was called Blink, and it's about the concept of thin slicing data sets and how people have become very bad at doing it. And only certain sectors of our society are good at that because they have actually developed an intuitive capacity through their mental and spiritual growth. Unfortunately, most people aren't really truly growing and evolving like that, so their intuition is terrible. And they don't really have an accurate ability to thin slice data sets where they have limited data and limited variables. So I just want to let people know that yes, feelings can come into play. You can technically intuit some things, right? It is possible. But I'm largely going to ask people to try really not to do that in this presentation. When you are taking in a presentation, you do want to do both if you have those intuitive capacities developed. I'm going to operate kind of from the perspective most people don't. Right? So don't try to feel this information. You have to think it through logically and research it and apply the trivia method to it. And again, my caveat or warning at the end of this slide is ignore this information due to your own ego bullshit at your own peril. Okay? Because that's what most people do with most things that they don't like to hear. Their ego clicks on, they snap into ego mode, and then I don't want to hear anything else you have to say. And if you do that, once again, like I said, it's your funeral. The social engineers probably already own your mind, and they're just going to tighten their grip on your mind, your perceptions, your likes and dislikes, how you think, and ultimately then, in the long term, how you behave and what happens to you. Because your thoughts and behaviors are going to largely drive what happens to you and all of us in the human future. And then on the right-hand side here, you know, I depict the, stereotypical person who doesn't want to hear anything, putting their hands over their ears and yelling so that they can't hear what the other person has to say. And up above it says, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. I believe that was George Orwell. And that is absolutely true. Freedom of speech means saying things that are unpopular, uncomfortable, that people don't want to hear because they're comfortable in their ignorance. okay? And I would extend it to people saying things that aren't true, right? I'm applying this to what I'm saying that is true. And I still think people should just be allowed to say things that completely aren't true based on their beliefs. Like, could you imagine me saying to some bullshit leftist commie or some ignoramus far right-wing nut job, that thinks Trump should become a king? You're not entitled to your dumbass, ignorant moron opinions, and you don't have freedom of speech to go and say those things to others about what you believe. I mean, like, I'm afraid of what these people say. Could you imagine me wanting to censor people's speech? What kind of a fucking weakling would somebody need to be? I mean, that's just a childish fucking weakling is the only words that I could apply to someone that wants to shut somebody up because they can't debate them in matters of truth. And they just want to censor their freedom of speech. Now, this doesn't mean that I will necessarily engage morons, right? Oh, come and debate me over this, and this. No, I don't have time to debate morons. I put my information out freely to people who want to receive it. That's what I do. That's my job, okay? That's what I am appointed by the creator of the universe to do here. I don't owe anybody my time to go and have some unwanted conversation or debate with them. I'll speak with who I choose to speak with. I have freedom of association. No one's going to try to force a conversation upon me. Okay? Let's get that clear and understood straight out of the gates. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about here. Nor do I have the right to go pull somebody off the street and force them to listen to me. That's why I put my information in a central repository on my website. It's out there on relatively uncensorable platforms, and you can choose whether you want to hear it or not. But I'm not going to tailor what I say based on somebody else's emotional weakness. Okay? I'm going to say whatever I want to say, whether you want to hear it or not. If you don't like it, shut it the fuck off. That's the answer. Okay? The next caveat I want to bring to people before launching into the actual data is watch the whole thing. Unless you've really listened to the entirety of what I'm about to present, you don't know what I think about it. You don't know my conclusions and my findings. It's a tapestry, folks. You have to take it all in. Okay? So if you think you're going to get a lot of value by watching a tiny bit, it's not going to happen that way. You're going to probably be left more confused instead of less confused and more knowledgeable. The information that I'm going to present in this presentation is a tapestry in and of itself. And it is in turn part of a larger tapestry. So this is a subset of social engineering tactics. That's what you have to understand regarding the Unholy Feminine presentation. There's so many more social engineering tactics that, again, I went over them during the course of about a year and a half back when What on Earth is Happening started in 2010 and early 2011. But this presentation is meant to be taken in as a whole in its entirety to gain the maximum value from it. So if you want to gain maximum value, I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. Okay, and I said here because I deliver it over 2 days in both parts. This is going to be over many days in this extended format. Otherwise, you will most likely not recognize the patterns that are inherent to the tapestry. To gain maximum value regarding the entirety of the presentation I present, I highly recommend visiting my website, whatonearthishappening.com, and listening to all the audio and watching all the videos on the site. Then you're really going to get an idea of the tapestry that I'm presenting because it's all interconnected with other mind control techniques and social engineering techniques. And not only that, deeply interconnected and interwoven with the dark occult and its practices and techniques, because that's ultimately who these social engineers are behind the scenes. You know, behind the ostensible corridors of power, we're really dealing with an occultocracy. We definitely don't have a patriarchy, we don't have a matriarchy, we have an occultocracy, as I'll be talking about. I respect people that tell me the truth no matter how hard it is. Okay, you know, this is sort of like maybe a modern day representation of the Fool Tarot card. The soul, you know, the individual with his spirit elemental walking into the manifest physical universe and taking that leap of faith that it's going to lead the being where it needs to go and teach that being what they need to learn. Okay? And that's the kind of respect I have toward other people. I want people to be straight shooters with me, tell me the truth, not sugarcoat things. And that's what I expect here. I expect people to hear the hard truth, have respect for it as the truth, and integrate it into themselves after they've done their own homework. I'm not on any side except for the side of truth and freedom. This is a quote someone actually put on a meme, a slide of my own words from my podcast in the past. I'm not on any side except for the side of truth and freedom. That's the side I'm on. Those are my values. That's what I find important and indispensable in life. I'll take those over being liked any day. And that's powerful to hear my own words echoed back to me. You know, I sometimes do go back and watch some of my older presentations and listen to some of my older podcasts, and I'll tell you what, you know, I sometimes go through that thing of, oh, that everybody does, I don't like to hear my own voice, you know, but when I hear the information that I've laid out over the years, I don't want to, you know, physically pat myself on the back, but I say to myself, you've done a damn good job, man. And you've lived up to what the universe has asked of you. Because when I hear what I've said, I find that very, 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 very few people have ever laid it out like that, if any. And I'm very happy with the caliber of the work that I've put out and how straightforward it's been. And, you know, I'd like to see it have more influence upon people out there. I don't know whether that's ever going to happen because I don't know whether they're intelligent enough, and I don't know whether they are capable of getting their egos out of the way enough, quite frankly. I don't have much faith in people. I have faith in the truth. That's what I serve. I do not serve human beings. Let's get that abundantly clear before even jumping in to the material at hand. I'm not here to serve people. I'm here to serve truth. And that is what I will continue to do and endeavor to do to the best of my ability.